Okay, chapter 38 of the Ford haul truck. This one's going to be, again, a little bit all over the place, but one of the main reasons I wanted to post this video is because I've had some comments from a guy about the sleeper and a possible fuse box or fuse connection inside of the sleeper. And I want to take some video and post it onto this chapter of the inside of the sleeper and where he is thinking the fuse box should be. So let's get started here. We're going to be discussing the cab, the sleeper and the cab orientation, how the sleeper is going to orient with the cab, and what some of my thoughts are on that. Okay, so it's a day after I cut the back of the cab out. What I did is, this board, the bottom of this board represents the bottom of the sleeper. So if I keep the bottom of the sleeper kind of level or on the same plane as the bottom of the cab, that's what I'd like. What I want to do is insert this little clip here so that you know exactly what I'm talking about, the bottom of the cab. Now, there's actually three different levels. There's a floor level or an opening level. Let's call it the same, the floor level and the opening level. There is an upper level that kind of protrudes up and would fit around the frame rail. But when I said that I wanted to keep the bottom of the cab level with the bottom of the sleeper, I'm talking about this level down here, the main level. So as you look down the truck, the bottom of the cab is going to be the same elevation approximately as that bottom of that sleeper. So don't confuse that with the opening level or the floor level or the level that sticks up that kind of fits up around the frame rails. So if you translate that into where the opening is, this board that and it's just sitting on here, this board represents the bottom, well, I guess you would consider it the floor of the sleeper cab. So in order to seal this cab, I'm thinking about cutting this down to that level, which wouldn't interfere with the mounting brackets, because that mounting bracket is much lower than the top of this board. And let me get you a tape measure and just show you that. Stupid me, I had a tape measure right here. Okay, so where those bolts mount is 4 inches down from this. So where the bolts mount is way below the plane of that floor level. So that wouldn't interfere. So what I could do is cut off this top section of this thing and kind of bring it out here. Now what I am going to have to do is provide a panel across here that I could seal the boot to. I'm going to lower this, and then on the bottom section, or after I lower it, I'm going to have to provide a panel across that cab to be able to seal the boot for between the cab and the sleeper too. Now that will be the bottom section of the cab. I mean, all the boot is doing is protecting air and water, moisture from coming up through from the bottom. It's not like the sides, or the critical part is the top where the boot has to seal. Sides are very important, top is critical. That is going to keep water from coming in, water, air, cold. Okay, as long as we were discussing the sleeper, let me delve into this thing about the discussion about a fuse box being in this panel or in this insert where the heater is, the heater air conditioning core. And so here is that opening. I'm trying to not get you blown up by that light that I've got there, but again, here is that opening where he thought the fuse panel might be, and there is no fuse panel in there. There's no fuse panel in there unless it's contained, and I highly doubt it's contained inside of the heater unit. But okay, some of you that follow this may be asking yourself, if you have a wiring diagram for the sleeper, it would show the fuse box. Well, there's two issues with that. One of the things that I don't know that I've ever told or mentioned this in the video is this is for a 70-inch sleeper. Now, he gave me this wiring diagram and I never noticed that until after I had it for a day or two. I'm not sure if the wiring on 54 or 63 or 70-inch sleepers are the same, or whether they have the same components in them. But the one thing that I do know, it does not show a fuse block on anywheres in this wiring diagram. But again, it's for a 70-inch sleeper. And again, I'm not sure if all of the models have the same wiring. Maybe some of them have fuse blocks and some of them don't, depending on the cab wiring. Here's what I do know. I do know that the wires that are shown on this 70-inch sleeper thing don't necessarily ring true to the wiring that's the existing wiring in my sleeper. So even if this didn't show a fuse block, that's not saying that there's one there, because the wiring itself is not the same as on my sleeper in some cases. So if you guys were thinking that, that's kind of the answer to it. Yeah, no fuse panel. There's no fuses. It's very hard to get that control panel off of there. But there is no fuse panel back there either. I just kind of wanted to show you around here a little bit. What I did is also pulled out all of the drawers and kind of looked behind them to make sure there was nothing back there, and I don't see anything back there. On the other side, there is no fuse panel either. Now, there is a speaker cabinet, and I highly doubt that they would have put fuses inside of that speaker cabinet, but if the issue keeps going on about that there should be a fuse panel in here, I will pull it apart. But I've looked inside all of the cabinet openings and everything, and again, I can find no fuse panel. You know, I've kind of opened up all of these, and but anyways, there's that. So anybody that knows anything about these, please leave a comment. You know, share your thoughts on it. Is there a fuse panel in here? Is there not a fuse panel in here? Okay, here's round 2 with the U-bolts for the front axle off of the Ford haul truck. I just opened it up. I took the 2 nuts off of it. We'll go over to the axle and hopefully they're gonna fit. Yeah, they'll fit. I mean, they just need to be tweaked a little bit, but they're good. Now, what my issue is, I've got to make some bushings for the side of these things because the springs off of that original, let me see if I can get that down through there. See, the springs off of this truck, my truck, are a lot narrower than the springs that were on the original truck. So I'm just going to make a couple of bushings that are going to go on the side of it, but I'll bring it back. Yesterday I went down to Metal Supermarkets and picked up some 3/4 inch by 3 inch stock material. As you know, on the truck, the springs that were off of this new axle, front axle that I got, were much wider than the springs on the existing axle. So these springs were 4 inches wide. The springs on the truck are 2.5 inches wide. Now I'm going to use these existing springs for 2 reasons. One, it would be almost impossible to find, well, without having them made, find a spring that would go from center to center of those existing shackles. And those existing spring shackles are designed for 2.5 inch springs. If I was to get a wider spring on there that would fit the axle, then I would have to modify the shackles, 4 shackles, 2 on this side, 2 on the other side. And that would be much harder to do, not even worth doing, because these springs are more than adequate for this, for what I've got here. Plus, I'm also going to have an airbag. I'm going to put airbags on these. But anyways, I regress. So I'm leaving the 2.5 inch springs on there. But what that does is put this in, the 2.5 inch spring has to fit in a 4 inch slot. So what I did is got some 3/4 inch material, and what I'm going to make is I don't really want to call it bushing, but let's call it a take-up plate that fits on both sides of the springs and takes up that extra 1.5 inches of room that there's going to be on each side of the spring. So what I'll do is set that plate. Got my coffee cup on top of this. Hang on and let me reorganize, and I'll take you over there and show you what I'm going to do. So what I'll do is lay this plate right up beside the spring and use that for a shim on both sides of the spring to take up the space between the U-bolts and the side of the spring. So there won't be any slop in there. As a matter of fact, it's exactly 1.5 inches, and this bar is exactly 3/4 inch, and it's going to be tight. If worst case comes to worst, I have to mill a couple of slots that kind of fit onto the fit the U-bolts down past the 3/4 inch material on each side, then I'll do that. Then what I'm going to do is, to keep them in place, I'm just going to take a piece of the same stock, what's ever left over, and just so this plate would be on the inside of the U-bolt, and what I would do is just cut a piece of stock that would fit exactly in between there and weld it to it so that it can't, so there's no possibility that the shim would slide out, because it's going to be that piece of plate in between the two U-bolts is going to keep it affixed in place. So I'm over here at the axle, and I just kind of wanted to show you what I was talking about, those spacers. So you're going to have the longer piece in the back of it, the spring will go in there, and this exact same thing will be duplicated over here in reverse, of course, but shims for the smaller size leaf spring on the haul truck. They've got to be welded up and everything, but I won't show that as part of the haul truck build. I'll just probably put that in a shop update or something. What I'm doing is just taking the shocks off in preparation for removing this axle. I pulled the bolts, the top bolt, it was a different size. Now I'm just working on the bottom bolt. Let me get a pair of pliers, get them washers off with, and a pry bar, pry them off with. What I did was sprayed a little WD-40 on them, because those bushings, it's got rubber bushings on them, and they're probably seized up. Oh, nope. Miracles never cease. Things are in pretty good shape for being 35 years old. Shut you, I'll take you over the other side. You know, I was going to try and take them brake hoses off, but I'm not going to reuse them, so I'm just going to cut them. I've still got to weld up them shims and get some jack stands that are tall enough to support underneath the frames before I can roll that axle out. But thanks for watching, guys. Hit that thumbs up, comment, subscribe.